Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art and culture, and this is Billboard Breakdown. So we currently live in some uncertain times. The economy seems a little shaky, the effects of climate change are becoming all the more prevalent, the United States is on the precipice thanks to a bullshit horse race media narrative that's eons more dishonest than anything Hillary Clinton has ever said, and roughly on par with the lies that the Trump family spews out daily. And now, of all things, Brad and Angelina are splitting up. Thankfully, I live up in Canada, where things are a fair bit more stable all around, with the exception of climate change, obviously, but that doesn't mean that this sort of instability isn't impacting our Hot 100 charts, albeit probably less driven by climate change in the election and more because we're now transitioning into the fall months and this happens nearly every year. Now, the place with the most stability for once is our top 10, where once again Closer by the Chainsmokers featuring Halsey is dominant at number 1. And again, given how huge the streaming, YouTube sales, and airplay momentum are compared to the competition, I don't really see that changing. Sure, Heathens by 21 Pilots might have some momentum on the radio and streaming and solid YouTube and sales, but solid isn't really competitive right now, so it's gonna get stuck at number 2. Its bigger competition is Cold Water by Major Lazer, Justin Bieber, and Mia, which has more radio, streaming, and YouTube overall, but it's getting edged out on sales, so it's stuck at number 3. Next we have at number 4, Cheap Thrills by Sia featuring Sean Paul. And given how much radio and streaming it lost this week, to say nothing of some weak sales, my suspicion is that it's gonna drop out of the top 10 pretty fast. But then we have Don't Let Me Down by the Chainsmokers featuring Deja, which might have stable streaming but even weaker sales and dropping airplay, so it's at number 5. Now this takes us to our first new top 10 entry, Let Me Love You by DJ Sneak featuring Justin Bieber at number 6. Song I barely remember, but it's got enough consistent stats across all categories to be competitive and capitalize on some weaknesses. Hell, that's why I jumped over This Is What You Came For by Calvin Harris featuring Rihanna slipping down to number 7, which is mainly this high because it's clinging to some remarkably solid YouTube and airplay and little else. But then we have our unwelcome return to the top 10, Treat You Better by Shawn Mendes at number 8, which despite losses in streaming still has enough radio momentum to hold on to this spot. Granted, I think part of it is because Ride by 21 Pilots lost hard down to number 9, losing airplay and without any YouTube buffer to add support for its weaker sales. It's gonna be gone pretty soon. And finally, we've got Send My Love to Your New Lover by Adele, clinging on to number 10 thanks to airplay that's already starting to slip away, because at this point, it's got nothing else. And on that promising note, our losers and dropouts. And man, we had a lot of them this week. Bit smaller list in the latter category. We got Sorry by Beyonce exiting gracefully, along with longtime losers like From the Ground Up by Nan and Shay, Kill 'Em With Kindness by Selena Gomez, and Famous by Kanye West featuring Rihanna and Swiss Beats. And hell, they took out the non-starter Lockjaw by French Montana and Kodak Black, so no complaints there. Where things get a little bit more complex are our losers, and we've got a massive week of them here. First, let's get the easy ones out of the way. The Suicide Squad loss from Gangsta by Kehlani up to 74, and You Don't Own Me by Grace featuring G-Eazy down to 100. Although you could also group in that song with the expected drops are Hasta El Amenace by Nicky Jam to 92, and American Country Love Song by Jake Owen down to 90. We also have our premature losses like the simultaneous flops for Rise by Katy Perry down to 72, and the massive drop for Make Me by Britney Spears featuring G-Eazy to 76, to go along with My PYT by Wale, which fell down to 84. Then we've got the non-starters. May We All by Florida Georgia Line featuring Tim McGraw burning out at number 86, Child's Play by Drake thankfully dropping hard to 87, and sadly, Hold Up by Beyonce sliding down to 88. Now that leaves us with No Shopping by French Montana featuring Drake, which continued its descent down to 97. Again, bad week for French Montana, but I'm not complaining here. But where things get a little bit more wonky are in our gains and returning entries, and we had a lot of them too. Sure, I get a little bit more Sunshine by Jason Aldean was gonna come back after the big album release up to 69, but our gains are a little bit less explicable. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining that No Problem by Chance the Rapper featuring 2 Chainz and Lil Wayne surged up to 63, but the song has been charting on the Hot 100 for 17 weeks. You'd think that the summer would have been an ideal time for the radio to push it, so it's probably gonna be gone soon before it actually gets past the top 50. I'd take it over Sia's collaboration with Kendrick Lamar on The Greatest, which roared up to 24 on being bland and generic story of this year, or over either of our mediocre trap hits from the past few weeks that somehow got traction, like Caroline by Eminem going up to 70, and Ooh Ooh by Young Ma rising up to 67. Thankfully, the rest of our gains are a little bit more tolerable. It Don't Hurt Like It Used To by Billy Currington rising up to 55 because something needs to fill up country radio right now. Scars to You're Beautiful by Alessia Cara continuing to gain momentum up to 62. And most surprisingly, Fade by Kanye West featuring Ty Dolla $ign and Post Malone leaped up to 47. I'm not really complaining. It's an interesting song and the video is great, but I am surprised it's gotten this much momentum, especially compared with the other tracks on The Life of Pablo. You would think there would be other songs that would be more single-friendly that would get more traction. Of course, when we take a look at our list of new arrivals, brace yourselves, folks. It's gonna be a rough list. Starting off with number 98, X by 21 Savage and Metro Boomin featuring Future.
Hold up, I'm just stunting on my ex, bitch. I'm just flexing on my ex, bitch. Truck a wedding ring, I bought a necklace. Diamonds got the flu, try not to catch this. I left that hoe alone cause she was ratchet. All these bitches salty, they can't stand.
You know, for as many of the XXL freshmen that I've talked about on the charts in 2016, I've mostly avoided talking about 21 Savage. Oh, I've heard of this guy. He was on Travis Scott's last album, Birds in the Trap Sing McKnight, for a verse that wasn't bad. But like most of the XXL freshmen this year that aren't Anderson .Paak or Denzel Curry, I haven't been remotely impressed by what he was bringing to the table. And it seems like major labels have actually agreed with me for once, as all of his EPs and mixtapes are self-released. But since he managed to get Future on track for his collaborative EP with Metro Boomin, it just managed to scrape onto the Hot 100, and wow, this is a bleak track. Bare bones, bassy trap beat, desaturated synth tones, hints of what sounds like woodwinds in the background on the verses that become kind of chiptune, and Future and 21 Savage rapping with the flat cadence of two people who are just bored by all the jewelry and sex that they get. It's an ugly song, not helped at all by the flexing on X's that it cribbed from Ray Shrimmer's My Ex. You know, Ray Shrimmer's worst ever song, and such a casual disregard for everything and everyone else that I'm inspired to not remotely care about this whatsoever. It's not precisely whack, the production's not bad, but sure hell is not interesting. But on the topic of Ray Shrimmer, number 96, Black Beatles by Ray Shrimmer featuring Gucci Mane.
Young bull living like an old geese. Quick release the cash, watch it fall slowly. Frat girl still trying to get in. Haters mad for whatever reason. Smoke in the air, binge drinking. They lose it when the DJ drops the knee.
Okay, time to blow your mind. This is easily Ray Shrimmer's best song thus far, and nearly all of that has to do with the production, which I actually quite like. The glossy, dark synths that transition into darker keys, and the fast-paced gallop in the lower tones layered with the trap beat. It almost has a dark wave vibe, and that's something I could definitely get behind. Granted, that's where the majority of my praise stops, as Sway Lee croon raps through a lazy flexing verse and hook, Gucci Mane drops a drug-overloaded verse that's not particularly interesting, and Slim Jimmy just follows suit. What I find significantly more exasperating is that they refer to themselves as the Black Beatles, which proves that not only can they not count, but they aren't remotely familiar with the Beatles or the sort of music that they make. And that begs the question, if they're both so stupefyingly rich as they continuously brag, why couldn't they afford a Beatles sample or interpolation to fit in with the rest of the song, eh? Ugh, whatever, that's nitpicking. Really, outside of the production, this track is completely empty and lacking in anything interesting. But it is good production, so I'll give it that. Number 89, Sleep Without You by Brett Young.
Ain't coming home soon. As long as I can bet on you calling in the bed after slipping out your high heel shoes. I ain't lying, saying have a good time out with your girls, girl, do what you do. No matter how late, baby, I'll be staying up. I can't sleep without you.
You know, I swear, these male country stars with completely forgettable names just keep on coming and going, don't they? It seems like between trap bangers and interchangeable guys who play a rough approximation of modern country music, none of them are really sticking around. They got one song and then they're gone. So considering this will probably be the first and last time that anybody cares about Brett Young, he's from California, he's signed to Republic, and this is a single off his EP released back in February. And it's not bad. Brett Young's vocals remind me of a fair bit of the acoustic singer-songwriters who briefly snagged some success in the 2000s on the adult alternative scene, and whom I'm probably more forgiving of than I probably should be. And the lyrical sentiment, it's kind of cute, waiting for his girl to come home from her night out with the girls cause he can't sleep without her. And the funny thing is that this song doesn't really ring as douchey as it could be, mostly because Brett Young seems more bemused and surprised at his own earnest affection for this girl. If I were to nitpick here, well, there's no need to use drum machines, but they're also light and sandy enough courtesy of Dan Huff's production that they blur in with the real drums and more staccato acoustic strums, so they're not that noticeable. Honestly, the song might have taken its time getting here, but it's pretty decent. It's not bad. Maybe a sign that even pop country is starting to improve with the rest of the genre. So, as it is, I'll take this. Number 75, Deja Vu by Post Malone featuring Justin Bieber.
Tell me, is that deja vu? Cause you want me and I want you. Tell me, is that deja vu? Cause baby, this ain't nothing new.
You know, I'm sorry, folks. I apologize for the lack of a trigger warning, but seriously, we need to have a talk about continuing to give Post Malone a career. It's bad enough that Fade could well give him a second hit as a guest star, but now that he's hooked up with Justin Bieber, we as a society might have to deal with the fact that he's not going away. And you know what? That's a problem, because despite the good vibes, which on this track feel kind of awkward with the generic popping trap beat, the funereal organ, the ghostly coos, and the watery keys trying so hard to imitate Hotline Bling, that Post Malone remains a remarkably lousy artist, both as a singer and as a songwriter. This is a guy who, in the hook, tells the girl to leave her shits at the door, in this case referring to her panties and invoking all manner of brown stains, who says that he's trying to see her from his own perspective, as if there's any other perspective that he can use. And then there's the bigger picture here. These two, Justin Bieber and Post Malone, are wondering if it's deja vu that he wants to be with this girl given how many times it's happened before with all the bitches and hoes in the past. Now, maybe it's just me, but it doesn't seem all that romantic when the foundation of your song is that you've banged so many women in this exact same scenario in the past that you now casually disregard, and that will probably end up being just the same if you're remembering it like that. It's made even worse by Justin Bieber, who implies, even as he points this girl in the right direction as if he knows what that is, that it's all new. So how can it be deja vu, Bieber? Look, I get it. You're not supposed to think about the fine details in a song and just embrace the vibes, man. But when both these guys are layered so close to the front of the mix with Post Malone's warbling, you can't ignore such obvious incompetence here. So yeah, the song blows, Post Malone continues to suck, and Justin Bieber remains as overexposed in 2016 as ever. Next, number 73, Blue Ain't Your Color by Keith Urban.
Don't need that guy. It's so black and white. He's stealing your thunder. Baby, blue ain't your color.
Okay, seriously, can the ripcord era of Keith Urban just be over already? It hasn't charted or sold as well as Fuse just yet, and it's a markedly worse album, so can we just forget this part of Keith Urban's pop experience ever happened and just move on? Well, until that happens, we got the fourth single, Blue Ain't Your Color, from that album. That drops into this very sparse waltz cadence built off a painfully thin drum machine and desaturated strum, as the mix swirls around a completely drained and distant guitar line that might have some smoky sizzle on the brief solo, but really doesn't do anything to really jump out at me. But as when I covered Ripcord, my issue with the song was always the lyrics. He meets a girl at a bar who is now sad, he jumps to the assumption that her boyfriend isn't treating her right, and then he tries to make her smile even as he professes that he's not trying to take her home. Yeah, sure, I'm not sure I believe that. Now, to his credit, Keith Urban at least does sound modestly sincere, but what this song reminds me of a lot more is The One You're Waiting On by Alan Jackson, which aside from having far better production that actually sounds like country music, has some subtlety, some greater detail, fantastic vocal harmonies. Wait, why aren't I listening to that song instead? Oh, right, Keith Urban. The guitar work's salvageable, but the rest of the song, I'm gonna forget about this the second I finish this episode. Sorry. And finally, number 15, Perfect Illusion by Lady Gaga. And now the big one that so many of you have been asking me to talk about in comments and on Twitter, and the song that, if we're being brutally honest, will probably sink hard just like the rest of the big comeback singles from the pop divas of the late 2000s that we've heard lately. Now, Lady Gaga falls into a different sort of lane than most, namely that art pop did some real damage to her brand that was arguably unwarranted, as that album it really is not that bad, but she has managed to keep enough of a profile outside of her music to remain relevant. But her radio deal and sales are already dipping hard, so is this a real flop? Is it that bad? Honestly, I can't really say this is a great song, especially by Lady Gaga standards. She's put out some fantastic singles that I really do love. Now, it's not bad by any stretch. Lady Gaga is singing her lungs out, the electro rock synths lead to a solid hook. Even if I do feel the track is a little percussion heavy over melody, especially coming in the verses, the lyrics reflecting the frustrated disappointment of falling and breaking apart within the fakeness of social media culture, yeah, that's well framed and pretty well executed here. And that key change? Well, yeah, of course, I'm on board with that. And yet, this is not a song that really excites me coming from Lady Gaga or has a real bite to it. I'm placing nearly all the blame on the production, specifically around the guitar. This is a track that could have had rock's explosive force to match Lady Gaga's singing. Hell, it was almost promised by the riffs that opened up this song, and yet it doesn't explode. It's too clean and pristine, especially after that key change. And considering how much Lady Gaga idolizes Queen, she could have easily amped things up with more distortion, and I would have been on board. As it is, it feels oddly safe coming from her, and despite being a pretty good tune, from Lady Gaga, I tend to expect more. She's capable of greatness, and this song ain't it. Now granted, considering the week we had here, it's gonna get best of the week. Brett Young, he gets close, but he's not quite there. As for the worst, I'm giving it to Post Malone and Justin Bieber for Deja Vu. Questionably good vibes can't redeem some awful writing and not particularly good performances either, especially from Post Malone. Who likes this guy's voice? So this is a pretty tumultuous week, and I can't say there was a lot of quality. Let's hope we get some better soon. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.